Hi, I'm Lizzy Swan. Thank you very, very much to Norfolk for having me here today. What I would hope to share with you is very much around neurodiversity as an employer and as an employee within the context of the workplace. So today, as I've already said, I'm hoping we can sort of define neurodiversity within the context of the workplace and give some examples. That'll be very brief today, but highlight, most importantly, why we all benefit from nurturing neurodiverse talent in the workplace and sharing adjustments that empower all employees to be their best and to feel their best at work. So neurodiversity, as everybody on this call will likely already be aware, and I'm conscious of that, but it's the idea that we each interact and experience the world around us in different ways. There's no one right way of thinking, learning and behaving. And it's this idea that these differences, these neuro differences, are to be celebrated rather than viewed as deficits, potential threats, or just to be tolerated. It's about celebrating the uniqueness of every mind and a recognition that this range of differences is part of a normal variation in the human population. So I'll do a whistle stop through neurodiverse conditions. Autism, dyslexia and ADHD are the most commonly diagnosed conditions in the UK. But as we're sort of developing our knowledge of neurodiversity, we also recognise that obsessive compulsive disorder, PTSD, Tourette's, anxiety, depression, there are so many other neurodiverse conditions. And as you'll be aware, so many co-occur. So as we learn more about our brains and how they affect our behaviour and how those differences impact our relationships, how we perceive our own experience of the world around us, we're strengthening that knowledge and awareness of neurodiversity. And the idea is, what do we then do with that knowledge? It's about celebrating those differences and creating accessible environments where neurodivergent people can thrive. As colleagues, as friends, and as managers or employers, we also recognise that understanding these differences isn't just about how they may impact on neurodivergent employees, but it's also about the demands placed on parents, partners, siblings, children of neurodivergent children or adults. I shared this at the last session that apparently I'm a sandwich carer, which means that I have caring responsibilities for a parent and I have caring responsibilities for a child. As well as I would say, as caring responsibilities for myself as well. But it's that idea of how we can actually support one another and what can we do to not just recruit great talent, but retain as well. So you'll probably hear me repeat those quite a few times. You may be aware of the statistics around neurodiversity within the population. Currently, around 15 to 20% of the population in the UK are neurodiverse, but with the caveat, are diagnosed. We know that neurodiverse people are more likely to be unemployed than any other disability. And research suggests that the employment rate is around 30 to 40%. So that's about 3 times the rate of people with a disability and 8 times the rate for people without a disability. So attracting and retaining neurodiverse talent is just one way of expanding our pool of amazing people, and it is fundamental to the sustainability of an organisation or a workforce, particularly within the context, the conversations that you're having today on this call around the challenges that your specific workforce are facing and the need to just retain and sustain that workforce. So I talk a lot about neuro-inclusion. We know from research that where we are establishing neuro-inclusive cultures, that those are workforces that celebrate the strengths that neurodiverse employees bring. We can talk about hyperfocus, creativity, innovative thinking, detailed processing. As a neurodivergent woman, I would say that many of those things can also lead to not just strengths, but also can create challenges for me. Hyperfocus is fantastic if I can have strict boundaries around that and I'm okay transitioning to another activity that might not appeal to me as much at the time. And sometimes my detailed processing can mean that I struggle to see the bigger picture. So whilst research will often talk to us about strengths, it's about the context within those strengths are being developed. I will not talk about superpowers because whilst I do think there are strengths, it's really hard to extract what's personality, what are traits. There are strengths, but superpowers, I struggle with that one. I'd be interested to hear your views on that as well. But we do know that neurodiverse employees add a greater cognitive diversity and creativity to teams. Having a diverse workforce means you're going to get creativity that you don't get if everybody thinks the same and everybody takes the same approach. Those neuro-inclusive environments are built on strong foundations of belonging. So for employers, belonging is about bringing out the best in everyone and creating a workplace consistently great for all employees. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about in the adjustments is not just about something that's going to be great for an autistic professional or a professional or an employee with ADHD, actually great for everybody. But neuroinclusivity goes beyond tolerance and moves towards this shared belief that we're better together. It's built on an organisational culture that's adaptable, flexible and supportive, and enables employees to be the best and do their best at work. It treasures the strengths of neurodivergent individuals. So it is more than likely that all of us work with a colleague who's neurodivergent or who cares for someone who's neurodivergent. So knowing how to offer support to colleagues and friends is key to building that wider sense of belonging for everybody in the workplace. I'm now going to go on to something of a whistle stop around adjustment. So this may apply to you if you're an employer or a manager having conversations, or it may apply to you if you recognise that you are neurodivergent or you have a diagnosis yourself. And again, it could be about helping friends and colleagues too. As I've said, research shows that accommodations to support neurodiverse professionals actually benefit the productivity and well-being of the entire team. What's good for neurodivergent professionals is good for all. And where that best practice is in place, adjustments are offered as the norm, not the exception. So what do they look like? I always say, think systems, think environment. Let's start with systems. So neuro-inclusive organisations promote flexible working in job adverts and throughout the organisation. Only 16% of autistic adults are in full-time employment, according to research. And the need for that flex affects neurodiverse employees more than their non-neurodivergent colleagues. So late starts, compressed hours, access to part-time working all form part of a bigger conversation. We know that neurodivergent staff may have a need for flexibility, managing medication titration. You'll be aware of the global shortages, no doubt. Hormonal fluctuation, particularly women who are experiencing fluctuation of estrogen and progesterone across their menstrual cycle, but also through perimenopause and menopause as well. And I have forgotten postpartum as well. Estrogen is the gift that keeps on giving. But it's also periods when sleep is significantly affected, and they can be different depending on so many factors. I know that for many people that I work with, October is a really difficult time in November because of the change with the change in terms of how many daylight hours we have and so on, but also the weather. So performance management, that's a key system. Is the job description clear? Do you have regular line management? Is there a buddy in place? Is there a mentor? Do you know what's expected of you and how to improve? Ensure that you've got regular line management and that those dates are sacrosanct. An agenda being shared in advance and notes being sent promptly after that meeting, whether verbally or in writing, really give clarity about who, what, and when next. Rejection sensitive dysphoria, RSD, is something that's sort of gaining momentum and understanding in inverted commas on social media. But thankfully, it's actually starting those conversations, and it affects many adults with ADHD. It leads to an anticipation of rejection and criticism. We know that neurodivergent people, and I talk about neurodivergent people as if I'm not one, but neurodivergent people are more likely to absorb or anticipate negative views. So challenging perceptions as leaders and as friends, provide reassurance, clear and specific feedback, because knowing what we do well means that we're more likely to do more of that. One of my favourites with systems is being really clear about logistics. So does your workplace have an employee handbook? We're really fortunate now to have, platforms like Canva who can create a really gorgeous document for us with minimal input from us around design, if that's what you struggle with. So getting those handbooks out and making sure they're refreshed and clear, not just about the organisation's values, but who people are, with photographs of those people, why you would go to those people, and also how things work for you in your workplace. It's that key information about, like, where are the toilets? If you're working in a client's home, what's the protocol for going to the toilet? Because actually in the care sector, as in education, we have incredible bladders, but actually that can lead to that understanding around actually when's what's appropriate here, what do we do? Start and end times, car parking. If you're doing lots of visits, where do we park cars? What do we do about it? Sending that information about where to park with a clear map. Street view is a blessing because it actually helps you visualize where you're going to and the spaces around Street View. But also, where do you eat lunch? What's the dress code? Remove the potential for uncertainty because it's uncertainty that can breed worry. Preferred communication is really key. So if you're working at a desk-based job, we are often bombarded by input. So email, telephone, if you're old school, WhatsApp, voice notes, direct messages, Outlook notifications. They are absolutely overwhelming, but actually having carved out time for do not disturb, if you factor in a meeting on your team's calendar and you actually say, this is what I'm going to do during this period, and you put on your do not disturb on Teams, it will silence some of those communications. What can be really helpful is though to actually tell colleagues, I am going to be available at this time, and make clear that people can get hold of you and when, because sometimes we panic when we feel that we can't get access to people immediately. Voice notes are fantastic for some neurodivergent people. I hate them. I will struggle to answer them. I have to get someone to listen to them. And actually, I use an app now to transcribe voice notes. Doesn't that sound ridiculous? But actually, what was happening was I wasn't getting those messages. But using an app like Otter or using AI means that I can read the transcript really quickly. So technology and systems are incredibly powerful, but we've got to be really cautious about how much we bombard people with. So refining and personalizing those systems. Thinking about actually using closed captions on Teams. The Otter app is one of my favorites, but you can use Otter app if you have permission of everyone at the meeting to record a transcript of a meeting or of a call. And then actually what Otter will do is they'll then, there are other apps that do this as well, but Otter I use, they'll then synthesize those meetings and create action points. It's really, really condensing workload and making it really clear who, what, and when next. Training in time blocking. So Pomodoro method, there's a fantastic YouTube video, which is about 3 minutes long, that teaches you about how to really sustain motivation with tasks using the Pomodoro method. Yes, it is named after the tomato. But there are also great apps and support online about how to use graphic organizers, apps, and get reminders as well. Although if you're like me, if you use the same reminder all the time, you just silence the reminders. So novelty is really, really important for some colleagues. Thinking about, are you represented in your workforce as a neurodivergent employee? Are neurodivergent leaders visible? Do we know that it's okay to share our neurodivergence? Because this workplace challenges stigma and shame-inducing behaviours. We always say that, you know, with neurodivergence, the disability may be hidden, but other people's reactions are not. And so not making assumptions and just being really open about that communication can be really critical so that employees feel safe to disclose. Promote access to work, make it really clear how the Department for Work and Pensions can provide funding to support with coaching. I mean, I'm biased because I provide a lot of coaching via access to work, but actually how you can get some of those adjustments, particularly if you're a small company, funded and that support through access to work. I'm going to talk about environment now. So is there a time and a quiet space for people to focus on tasks that demand more? Is there time carved out for when you have to write up reports, when you have to do your timesheets? And are meeting rooms available for confidential conversations? Because so many organisations now are open plan. And so that feeling of trying to share something discreetly can be really difficult if you know that, you know, Brenda in accounts can overhear all your private information. If there is a Brenda from accounts on the call, that is just the first name that came to my head. But thinking about the sensory experience within the environment. Lighting is really critical. I know it's a cliche that we don't like the big light. I personally don't like the big light. I feel it's heating up my brain. But smell, temperature, they all have a profound impact on functioning. So actually counteracting that with clarity about when to eat. One of my access to healthy and affordable food, discount codes for colleagues working in the care sector. So if they have to eat on the hoof and get food when they're moving between places, that they can access a discount code or they know where to go to get something healthy. Within environment, we place a huge demand on the need for small talk. I have a lot of words. I can talk a lot about things that I'm passionate about and that I'm informed about. But if you put me in a room of 30 other people and ask me to mingle, I will go mute, because that importance, that chatting, I find really difficult. So providing an informal buddy, or having been vigilant that some colleagues might find unstructured social events pretty difficult, and think about actually diversifying how you place that importance and what you do around not judging somebody on how well they chat as part of your interview process. Coaching, I mentioned this before, but coaching for strengthening goal-directed behaviour can be really powerful as part of a holistic support package, because it helps scaffold and maintain healthy boundaries, and can also offer powerful advocacy for neurodivergent colleagues. And the last adjustment, it's not really adjustment, but the thing that I'd love everybody to take away from these sessions is promoting self-compassion. Because that's how we create psychological safety, where we know we can learn from mistakes, that we can trust our team, and that we feel valued and we belong. I did many years as a deputy head teacher and as a head teacher and as a special needs coordinator in schools. And I offered a lot of training around behaviour support in schools. And we had all these great strategies around de-escalation and supporting and nurture. And actually, when all of those strategies fall, or aren't working, the one thing you can fall back on is kindness. And Angela said this in one of our previous sessions, and it really reminded me of that's the core message. So actually promoting self-compassion, kindness in action, it's then that we can bring our truest self to the workplace. I'm going to draw breath, and Alfina or Caitlin are going to kindly share with you some of my recommendations of books, websites, podcasts. I would love to hear from you as the parent of an autistic child. My daughter is 11, and already thinking about, as I have been since she was born, but particularly within the context of her autism, thinking about actually moving to adulthood. I know she's 11, but actually enjoying her childhood is the priority. But I'd love to hear from you some recommendations that you have. So if you would be willing to share those with Angela and the Norca team, then the next training session I can do will be including those recommendations as well. And also for me, I can go away and read those. But in closing, thank you for prioritising neurodiversity in the workplace today, and thank you for giving me this opportunity. You've got a jam-packed itinerary, so thank you.